Okay, so we've entered an adult client, we've entered a child client linked to that person. We've entered their interactions with healthcare and legal systems. We've entered information on the person that caused harm and their process through the criminal justice system. And we've also gone over the administrative services. So now one of the most important pieces is to enter services for the people that you have entered intake data on. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the adult client that I entered this afternoon. So I can bring that client up quickly by typing their client ID number in here. I don't remember the full ID, so I'm just going to type in a partial. And I think this is my client right here, the 24. I'm going to click edit to go to that client's record. And if I want to go to a specific place in that client's record, I can click this drop down menu and select the specific area. I'm going to go to services because we're going to enter services for this person. If you don't use this drop down menu and you just click the edit button, it will take you directly to that person's intake record. So I'm going to click on services. And it's showing no services because I haven't entered any services for this person yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And to enter a service, it's pretty quick and easy, I like to think. We do have a lot of service categories. I want to say there are 31. And again, we'll have some updated definitions for you very soon before the start of next fiscal year. You want to select the service category that best fits the service that was provided. Another point is every survivor that you serve should have at least one service on their first contact date. This person's first contact date I entered as May 1st. So you want to make sure you have some service. If you had contact with them on that date, you must have provided some service. And also note that the process of collecting intake data from the survivor, that is a form of in-person counseling. It may also be a form of telephone counseling if you've done this over the phone. Um, so you want to make sure you have a service on the first contact date, and you can select the category that best applies in the drop-down menu. Then you want to select the staff person that provided that service, the date that it occurred. Again, I'm going to select May 1st. And then the number of hours should be rounded to the nearest quarter hour. So if it was an hour and 15 minutes, I would enter 1.25, and you can type it in, or you could use these arrows up and down to enter that number. And then once you've entered one service interaction, if you just click outside the record, a new row opens up for you ready to take in another service. If you're done, you can just click save, but often you're entering more than one service interaction at a time. So I'm going to do that here. Let's see, I think we helped them with an OP on May 6th. That typically takes a little longer. And then I helped them extend that order a few weeks later. Okay, so I've entered a few services, and I'm just going to click save. And I noticed here I made an error already. This was supposed to be criminal legal or civil legal advocacy OP because I helped this client obtain a civil order of protection, but it slipped to criminal legal advocacy. So I'm going to check this edit box right here, which allows me to correct that. I'm going to change it to civil and then go ahead and save. Now, sometimes, maybe even often, you might spend a couple hours with the client and you may provide multiple services during that time. So let's say I sat down for 90 minutes with a client and we did multiple things during those 90 minutes. you do want to capture all the services you provided within that time and just divide them up with an estimation of how much time you spent on each service. So let's say during these 90 minutes, I spent a half hour providing employment assistance. I'll enter 0.5 hours for that. Then I spent another 15 minutes on helping this person with childcare. So I'll assign 0.25 hours to that. Let's say we did some educational assistance. We'll do half hour of that, and we'll do one more. Let's say, parental services. And we'll do a half hour of that, and then I'm going to save my services, and now I have a record of those that I just entered. To delete any service, you simply want to click the delete button and then click save. It's going to ask you if you're sure you want to delete that service record. You can simply click yes, and it has now removed that service. You can delete multiple services at one time, and you can edit multiple service records at the same time. And then to search for services, you can use this date range here. By default, it's going to show the last 90 days. But if you have been serving somebody for a long time and you want to look up those records, you can simply change the dates here. Or you could use this date range drop-down menu to look at commonly needed reporting periods, or enter your own dates. If there are lots of services, you can change the view here. I have 6 service records entered for this client. It will show only the first or the most recent 5 by default. So if I want to see more records on my list, I can either use the page changer buttons here, or I can expand the view. You can view up to 50 rows of services at a time. And now I'm seeing all 6. Okay, and now we also provide sometimes emergency shelter services, whether they're on site or off site. Maybe some of you provide vouchers for local motels or hotels they can stay at. If you provide any of these services, that's a housing service because it really doesn't involve a one-to-one staff interaction. It's helping that survivor find a safe place to stay for a period of time. So for those services, it's the section directly below. There are only 3 options here: offsite shelter, on-site shelter. These are both emergency shelter services. And transitional housing is a little longer term. I think some of you have transitional housing programs where survivors can stay in those programs for up to 3 years, I believe. So when you're providing these services and entering them, you simply select the type of housing service that was provided, the date they went in, and then the date they left. If I'm entering this now, I might not know when they're going to leave, so I'm going to leave this blank. And one thing, InfoNet will not allow you to enter future dates, except for certain areas. For example, the order of protection expiration date, that's obviously going to be in the future. But you don't need to enter an end date. You can leave this blank and then update this client's record once they leave emergency shelter. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I now see their shelter record, which I can edit or delete. And if I have multiple housing record or multiple records for various housing services, I can search for those records the same way I explained for the direct client services. Now, if you have a client in shelter, you'll also want to enter departure information when they leave. This is optional for you if you do not receive a HUD grant, but I think helpful. I mean, I would probably try to make the argument for collecting it, even if you're not required, because I think it's helpful to see where clients go when they leave your housing service programs. Um, and to enter departure information, there needs to be an end date for the housing service. So I'm going to edit this record and I'm going to say she stayed in the shelter for just one night. So I'm going to enter the 30th as the end date. And then I'm going to save that. So now InfoNet knows this person was in shelter for one night and they left on May 30th. And now I'm going to enter a departure record. So I'm going to click this plus button here to add a record. And the departure date, a validation here is the departure date must match the end date for when they left a particular housing program. So if I try to say May 29th here, it's not going to let me save. It's going to flag that record. I'll leave it that way for now, just so you can see. And I'm going to pretend that this person found a good friend to stay with as a safe place. I'm going to say staying or living in a friend's room, apartment, or house. That anticipated tenure of that destination is temporary or transitional. So I'm going to select that. Destination subsidy, that's if they do go into their own housing and they are having some financial help with paying for that housing, you could enter that here. There is an option for none when that does not apply. You can also enter not reported. And then a reason for leaving. These are all dictated by HUD, so some of them may not seem as applicable commonly among your survivors, but you never know, they might. I'm going to enter that they completed the program, and I am going to save this record. And it's letting me know cannot be older than the client's earliest shelter date record. So I'm going to edit my departure date to May 30th, and it should let me save that record now. Okay, thank you. So there's my shelter record again, and then there's a departure record. And then the last section on this page is the cancellation no-show section. This is another optional section, but helpful for learning why clients may disengage or no longer seek or want to receive services. So if a client does not show up or they cancel an appointment to receive a service, you simply pick the service that would have been provided had they shown up. The reason, which is simply whether it was canceled or a no-show, the staff who would have provided that service had it occurred, and then the date it was supposed to occurred. Somebody raised a very good question recently that I'm surprised I had heard for the first time. And that is, what if somebody calls to cancel a counseling appointment or for any service, and they just have to cancel because something came up in their calendar, but they reschedule? That is technically, yeah, that's a cancellation. But if they reschedule with you to a different time, life happens for all of us. We all need to reschedule sometimes. So I would not enter that as a cancellation no-show. This is really just to learn more about clients that may drop out of service for some reason and to help you identify patterns and why that may be occurring, or maybe it's occurring more often among certain groups of clients and you want to learn and understand more about why. So I would not enter something like that, but if they cancel and don't reschedule or they just don't show up, that is something I would enter as a cancellation no-show. And did I save this record? Maybe not, but I think I did now. And here I can view that cancellation record I just entered, and I can search for past records the same way I can for all the other records entered on this page: departures, housing services, and direct client services. One more question that came up recently that I'd like to address is, what if more than one staff person provided one of these services? It only allows you to enter one staff person here. So if Fernanda and I sat down with one of our clients and provided a counseling session, you want to divide that up based on the amount of time we were each speaking to that survivor. We can't both speak at the same time. So if it was an hour-long session, maybe I was speaking for about 30 of those 60 minutes, and Fernanda was speaking for the other half of that time. I would enter two in-person counseling sessions, zero point 0.5 hours from me and another 0.5 hours from Fernanda. So that's how you would handle that.